And welcome in to the Golf Intervention Podcast. It is a beautiful day in Richmond, Virginia. I had a day off today, Rob. What'd you do today? Anything exciting?
I was off
It's
as well.
Monday. Golf courses are closed. Like a lot of places are closed. So that's a common day off. And it was 87 degrees. We went to the pool.
It was so hot.
Pool, hung out with my younger
nice.
two daughters. And that was really fun. And pretty much while we were at the pool, I sit under an umbrella because I'm in the sun more than I like to be anyway. And I make notes about the Monday episode of the Golf Intervention Podcast. And I text you, and you text me back, and we communicate about it. And we're just trying to put out some stuff for you, the listener, that we think you're going to enjoy. So Robbie kind of promised the listeners a mental game, for lack of a better term. We're going to call it, for lack of a better term.
We don't like the term mental
game. I
don't
love the term. I wish I had a better term. And then I started making some notes while I was sitting there, because this is what I think to me, this is one of those things that is a little bit hard to wrap your mind around a little bit in golf. Like, what is the mental game? Like, why do players have sports psychologists? What is the role of that? And so I started making notes because we're trying to organize these episodes. You know, is it learning science? Is that mental game? Is it mindset, which I really like talking about mindset. Is it something of like stress management? Is that part of anxiety management? Is that part of the mental game of golf? Yeah. Is time and organizational management of your life mental game? Is habit formation mental game? Is pre-shot routine mental game?
It's all mental game.
And it seems like
you can really make it. I mean, everything behavior-wise is starting from the brain and working out. Right. So you can't really say, okay, I'm working on my mental game right now, and then an hour later go out and work on your swing. Or like, okay, I'm not working. No, you're always doing. Your brain is always doing it. So it's a term that I think everyone knows what, or I guess not everyone, but like it's a term that gets thrown around. I think a lot of people think of it as like, confidence. Like, how do I take confidence into every shot? How can I reduce negative thinking? I think people have a lot of conventions about what good, quote unquote, mentality or good mental game is, and they try to chase that, oftentimes to the detriment, which is something that we're going to talk quite a bit about in this little mini-series.
So we're going to give you again, Robbie and I are very similar in our belief system, I think, about this. And and we have been talking for the last hour plus about how we're going to organize this series of episodes, which we're not sure if it'll be at least 2 episodes on the quote-unquote mental game. And what we want to do is sort through some of that stuff, because I think as a golfer, I think golfers tend to get wrapped up in technique a lot. Like, okay, this isn't working, that isn't working. And if it's not working, then it's mental. Eric, it's all mental. And I kind of, when I hear that, I'm kind of like, is it though? Is it mental? I'm not saying I'm questioning that. I'm just kind of thinking in my mind, is it mental? Is it not mental? So I think what's important for us in this couple episodes that we're going to do is to help the listener, help the golfer sort through, like you were saying, is it just confidence? Well, I think the ultimate question is it competence first and then confidence, or can I just be confident and then that'll drive competence? I think we know probably what the answer to that is, at least from a golf technique coach. I have a theory on that. Okay. Sports psychologists may have a different theory, which I would appreciate as well. So whatever makes the player better is important. What we want to do is sort through and organize this in some ways with some really smart folks, because this is not who we are. And going back to the last episode I was listening to, and I apologize that my sound was way off on that. I don't know, we did something with my microphone, but at the end, I kind of went on a little, I don't know what you call it, but I kind of went on a little speech at the end about the PGA professional and like how many hats they wear, and then the teaching subset's got a lot of that too. And I would say that when it comes to things like anxiety management and stress and happiness and life strategies, like that's left to professionals that aren't really me, right? Like I think we learn from people, and what we try to do as coaches is say, hey, if you need to learn here's some stuff I know, and maybe you should go seek out some professional help there, or read some books that Robbie might point you to or whatnot. And so as we look at what we're trying to set out, a picture of what we think probably the first overarching structure here should be is talking about mindset. I think the mindset.
Yep.
We're looking at this chronologically in a way, which Robbie had this great idea. Like, what if we took the mental game from like far pre-round, like way pre-round, like whatever. This is just my thing. I've got to
when you first pick up the game,
from
right?
this day forward, kind of thing. Like you have that moment, like from this day forward, I'm going to figure this thing out, and now I've got to have some strategy or some changes, and like we were talking about, it's almost in a way in the spectrum of philosophical, religious kind of it's on that spectrum, and so you have those moments where you're like, I've got to figure this thing out to help me progress, and mindset is where it starts, in my opinion. And specifically a growth mindset. And growth mindset, it really has some different connotations and different levels to it. I think I look at it a lot in the context of having some gratitude about what we're doing. Being grateful that I get to play golf, or getting grateful that the opportunity for me to teach golf or get to experience the game that is so cool and it's so awesome. And we just feel blessed that we have that moment, right? We want to always be having fun. Like that's the point of competition in many ways, is to have fun, be grateful, be growth-minded, okay? And it played out, I think, and I'm not. This is not about Rory McIlroy. What I'm about to say. This is all about Bryson DeChambeau. About what I'm about to say, which is the U.S. Open yesterday. You could see that Bryson's mindset leading up to, because he's very open now about what's going on with himself on his socials and on his YouTube channel. And he's always been growth-minded. I mean, there's probably no more growth-minded guy. And when we go through this tonight, Robbie kind of details this for us, you're going to see, like, he's a lot of these things. But he also had that mindset of fun. You could see it. He talked about it. Being a showman, embracing it. The mindset of being grateful. I have a feeling that we all know that those guys that went to play on the LIV Tour, whether they say it publicly, which some have said publicly, some have, like, no one's really paying attention to them over there. Like, by and large, I mean, where they lived for their life in the center of attention was huge for them. And I'm sure a lot of them feed off of that attention. Like, it's cool for them to perform and people cheer, like, just like Bryson saw yesterday. And they just don't get it week to week. They don't. People are really, it's just not that energy. It may be someday. It's not now. And you can't deny that. So I have a feeling that he came in with that mindset of gratefulness and wanting to have some fun and be a showman. And at the end of the day, he won by hitting one of the most spectacular shots you're ever going to see in the biggest pressure cooker moment. And then he absolutely exploded with joy, right? But mindset guides you through all your behaviors. And so when you see a guy leaving in between a green and a tee box, leading the U.S. Open, he takes the time to sign the hat of a fan who's there. I mean, everybody probably saw that play out on social media. That's because his mindset was right? So he saw that, and that was just something that he embraced. And so that drove him to great performance yesterday, right? The outcome was what it was, okay?
Yeah.
And for Rory, I have no idea about his mindset, right? I'm the biggest Rory fan there is. Okay, he's my guy, and I feel like he's been going through a lot of things recently. We all know that. That's been playing out in the public eye, and he played brilliantly. And to be runner-up in the U.S. Open at Pinehurst, birdie 4 out of 5 holes to leap into first, like, incredible. And yes, at the end, it didn't play out for him. And obviously, the way he exited, you'd probably think, okay, he's probably dealing with some stuff in his life, which we all know. Okay, so that's his mindset, right? So there's strategy to this, and there's growth pieces to this. And that's what we're going to try to unpack tonight, aren't we, Rob?
Yes.
So as we look at this, and we talk about having a growth mindset, there's really two things we're going to contrast, right? A fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And some would refer to this as sort of like a connection to your value system. Now, I was mentioning things I think are a big value system for me, which is fun and competition and gratefulness, right? Like, those are huge. But there's way more than that in the value system. Like, there's other things as well. And so why don't you give us a little insight as to where we're going to talk about some work of somebody tonight and kind of detail it.
Yeah, so originally Dr. Carol Dweck, and then really I learned most of this, if not all of it, from a guy's name is Trevor Reagan, and he runs a website, I believe it's called Train Ugly. And then even more recently, Dr. Raymond Pryor, which a lot of the things that we're going to talk about on our podcast and things that you might have read on our Substack, a lot of that comes from Dr. Pryor. So huge fan of him. I would recommend everyone go out and, if you're interested in the brain and how it works and how you can leverage it to your advantage in golf, Golf Beneath the Surface is a great book. It is maybe the most important book written about our brain and performance that I can think of. So I really honestly can't recommend anything higher than grabbing Golf Beneath the Surface, because it is like my Bible of the quote unquote mental game. So we want to start by just giving credit where credit's due. So a fixed mindset we can think of as the belief that you are basically what you are, and it's either good enough or it's not. And a growth mindset is the core belief, and we want to say this is a core belief. And really, when we're talking about doing this chronologically, we start with this because this is the stuff that likely needs to be in place as far out in advance from performance as humanly possible. So if you're hearing this and you're playing in a money match tomorrow, I'm sorry, it's probably too late, right? You need to be starting the process of really understanding what connecting to this core value of growth mindset really is as a long-term investment for you and your game and your enjoyment of the game, right? So a growth mindset is the core belief that you can learn and grow. And I get pushed back and say, "Oh, well, I'm too old. I've started this too late." No. Anyone and everyone can get better. And that requires learning, which requires literally a shape change to your brain, right? So your brain is a amazing thing in the fact that it has what's called not synaptogenesis. It has neuroplasticity, which essentially is the quote unquote superpower of the brain. It is its ability to change. So understanding that our brains are designed with this deep biological superpower of being able to change, everyone has this ability. Everyone can change their behaviors, can learn and grow, right? So that was going to be the most core belief that you can possibly have, is that your 79 or your 87 or whatever that you shoot is not a reflection of who you are, and that is not what you are as a golfer. That is just a score on the scorecard. It's just a number, and your ability to improve and grow from that is what you make.
And you have to know, when you come to see me for a lesson for sure, you're going to find out really, really quickly that I believe in you. Whoever you are, I believe in you. I've seen it. I see it all the time.
Every day.
Every 30 minutes to an hour. We can do it. So you're going to get that from your coach, hopefully. Belief.
Yes.
A lot of times, though, I need it from the student. I need them to believe in themselves, right? Like, to get this mindset. So that's kind of what we're going to go through, trying to get that belief in themselves. I had someone the other day, I just was trying so hard. I kept hearing, I can't. I'm like, that's the mindset. That's a fixed mindset, right? Yeah. I'll always kind of correct and say, we're going to refer to that as I'm currently struggling with. Not I can't, right? I can't.
Yes. I like that.
So anyway.
So as we get into it, most, if not all, behaviors are going to start with motivation. All right. So what is the motivation of a growth mindset? What is the motivation of a fixed mindset? The motivation of a fixed mindset is really how they look, right? How they look to others, how they perceive they are looking to others, and how others are perceiving them is really their main aspect. And we can say this in the context of, if you listen 2 episodes ago, when we talk about process, performance, outcome, their motivation is typically more outcome and performance based. It's just the way it is, right? So they want to have this perception of being a good player, someone who is very competent amongst their peers, and that is really their driving motivation behind what they're doing. And by the way, as we're doing this, we're not saying like something is wrong with you if you're a fixed mindset. That's not at all what we're saying. What we're saying is that everyone has this hodgepodge, this combination, this kind of melting pot of fixed and growth mindsets as it comes to different things. You can think of probably 3 or 4 different activities throughout your life where you have a fixed mindset, and then 3 or 4 activities through your life that you have a growth mindset, right? So, and it could be even different parts of your golf game. It could be you have a growth mindset about your putting and a fixed mindset about your chipping.
100%.
Right? It works that way all the time, and we see it. So this is not something that is wrong with you. This is just something that you need to be aware of if you're going to learn and grow and get better. Okay, so motivation when it comes to the growth mindset is really, again, talking about 2 episodes ago, it's going to be the process, right? So they are mainly concerned with learning and getting better and really focusing on the process that it's going to take to get there, right? So motivation, right? Why we're doing what we're doing. That's why, for our coaches listening, a lot of times the first question you should be asking your students is, why are we here today? And if you ask that question, and a lot of times students will unfortunately lie to you, either not consciously but subconsciously.
Right. They're not
subconsciously they'll lie to you. They'll say that they're there to learn, but their behaviors will show you that they are there to put on a performance, right? So talking to you, maybe the student, because 90%, 99% of our listenership are students. If you're going to a golf lesson, if you're going to the facility, right, really, why are you going out there, right? Are you going out there to learn and grow through some maybe good, maybe bad performances that you might perceive as good or bad, right? Or are you there just to perform, right? So we would say that a performance motivation or an outcome motivation is a much less stable state long-term to your confidence and your enjoyment and your improvement of the game than your motivation to learn and grow and get better and be very process-oriented. So that's really where we want to start, is if we can start to shift that behavior of asking yourself that question, okay, why am I going out to the facility today? If you can just answer that question before you go out every time and saying, okay, I'm going out there to learn and improve, then that's going to be a great first step when we really start to descend, like a lot of the quote-unquote like the mental game practices that a lot of well-meaning coaches are going to recommend are just a byproduct of having the really, really sound core beliefs and especially a growth mindset. And like Eric, you and I talked before this, that we went on air, is that if you get the mindset stuff right, the stuff that's months, years in advance of actually performing, then a lot of the stuff comes for free, right? Whereas if you don't have that, then you're going to be working really hard on your quote-unquote mental game the day before, maybe during the tournament, and that's not where we want to be from a performance standpoint.
Yeah, correct. Okay, so as we're working our way through the elements of the mindset, of the growth mindset, we get to a place where we're kind of working on effort now, like what we're putting in. So how would you sort of kind of separate fixed and growth mindset in that part of it? All
right, so if you think about somebody with a fixed mindset, oftentimes when it gets hard. So we're talking about not the early stages of the learning curve, because like we said before, you can have a perfectionist mindset. You can have this fixed mindset, and not saying it's beneficial, but a lot of times it's not the worst thing in the world to have in the early stages of the learning curve. Like if you're a beginner, if you've never played before, if you think of your improvement as like, okay, I'm trying to really perfect this. I'm trying to get, I'm trying to, I have very limited room for error on either side of the spectrum here. Like that can be a good thing. Is all I guess we're saying is like perfectionism in general is something that we don't recommend. But if you're going to be a perfectionist, if you're going to have more of like that fixed mindset, then maybe there are some ways that on the early stages of the learning curve, you can still make that really rapid improvement just by putting in some effort, right? The problem is that as you continue to develop, now you have to make increasing levels of effort for decreasing levels of improvement.
Interesting, yeah.
Right. So when you get all the way to the end of that learning curve, now to get from a 71 to a 70, you're having to put a ton of effort in. It's very, very, very stressful for one shot of improvement. Whereas on the early part of the learning curve, you just put in some effort, and you get better by 10, 12 shots.
Question.
Right.
Yep.
So when it gets hard, right, when you have that added effort, a fixed mindset golfer is going to be more along the lines of saying, it shouldn't be this hard for me. Mm-hmm. They're going to say that. They're going to say, it really shouldn't be this hard for me. Right? There's something wrong with me. I must not be that good because I'm having to work too hard for this. Right.
Or could they be blaming external factors as well in that mindset, right? Like, oh, the world's against me, or this ball doesn't spin the right way, or my equipment isn't right, or the greens are too soft. Like that's that deal, right? Like everything's against them in that moment. Like it shouldn't be like this. I don't deserve this. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. And we've all been guilty of that. Yeah.
100%. Me too.
In some way, shape.
Absolutely. And so when you think about, again, we're going through like the archetype, like the optimal, like the most growth mindset person you're possibly going to think of. They actually get excited when they perceive like, okay, more work is required, right? So you can think about things in your life. You're like, oh man, I got a lot of work to do. And you just think about that, and like that's exciting, and you like want to put in that work. It's like that is going to be way more along the lines of a growth mindset.
Think Tiger Woods,
because it's just think of Tiger.
I mean,
exactly.
People would say, "What is he doing? Is he? Why is he doing what he's doing? Why is he changing? Why is he changing coaches, changing his swing?" Tiger was so growth minded and so fueled by that. He almost needed that. It was like a drug in a way. Like, I need that challenge. I need that effort. Like, the effort is what I put in. Like, and at the end of the day, it was a little bit of a detriment to him, right? The effort got focused too hard in some ways, and it hurt his body, right? So, like, that's the...
And this is where, as a parent... Right. So if I have any parents listening, this is where you have an amazing opportunity to start developing this with your children at a young age. When they do something that you might perceive as good, right? You have two options. You can either appraise the performance and the outcome, or you can appraise the effort.
Boom.
Right?
Yeah.
So when they make that shot, or when they start standing or crawling or walking for the first time, right? You have the choice to say, man, I'm so proud of how you figured that out. Like you stuck with it. You gave it your all. You did everything that you possibly could have done, and you put in the effort, right? And you're really appraising the effort that they're putting in, as opposed to when you get someone, a teenager coming off the green and they just win a tournament. What are they going to get, right? They're going to post to Instagram. Mm-hmm. They're going to get all these likes and these comments. And now what they're doing is they're attaching their self-worth and really their motivation to the outcome in the performance.
This is so important.
So huge.
Important. So important.
So if you're a coach, if you're a parent, right, if you're somebody who's connected with these players who are competing at levels that really the outcome can be incredibly stressful, then you have to make sure that they are still excited they're still engaged, they are motivated, they are appraising themselves really after competition for the effort that they put in. Yep. That has to be the driving force behind the way that you appraise them.
Love it. Could not agree anymore.
All right, so as we move our way up the learning curve, not only do we have to put in more effort to get in decreasing levels of improvement, but now the challenge point is not only getting greater naturally, but we end up having to put ourselves into more challenging environments in order to, again, continue seeing that growth, right? So think about when you have a kid in like AAU basketball and he's dominating, right? And he is heads and shoulders better than all the other kids. Would you want that person to continue playing in that same level, or do you want to bump them up a level and invite some challenge because you know that it is going to lead to learning and improvement on the other side? So a fixed mindset, when presented with, so two things. Number one, they're going to typically they're going to resist the addition of that challenge, right? So if you ask that kid and he's got a fixed mindset when it comes to his basketball, like, hey, do you want to move up? Like, do you want to play with the older kids? They're typically going to say, I think I'm good. I just want to stay down here because it feels good.
When they're motivated by the outcome. Correct.
Exactly, yeah. You're seeing how this is all kind of working together, right? Whereas, right, a growth mindset is going to be more likely to invite that challenge. They're going to be more likely to say, yeah, I want to go and I want to see what I can do here, right? So when they have that challenge, right? So number one, they're inviting the challenge. But then number two, when it gets challenging and they fail, or they perceive that they fail, the fixed mindset is going to be way more likely to give up and check out, right? So they'll get through 8 holes or 9 holes. They might have the perception that they need to shoot even par. They're 4 or 5 over par through 9 holes, and like, you know what, it's just not my day, right? Whereas the growth mindset is going to see that challenge, and they're going to persevere through it. They're going to work through it. They're going to show more grit, and they're going to, again, because they know that they're appraising their effort, right? They're going to be way more likely to stick in it, have again, not that the performance would lead to this, but they're going to be way more likely to have a quote-unquote bounce back after a bad front nine or a bad hole, right?
You see this sometimes play out, like when you're watching golf and it's Friday afternoon and your favorite golfer's 4 shots beyond the cut line. Like they're not making the cut. Yep. They're on the 18th hole, yet they're still going through their whole process. They're reading the green. Correct. They're marking their ball. They're marking a 2-footer. Like, why is he doing that? Well, he's focused on his process.
He wants
to. He's trying to figure out. Yeah. And you would see, and sometimes you see the interview, like, oh, how'd it go? Well, I tried to stick with what I was doing. I was trying to find something today. I think I got a little something on the back nine, and hopefully I'll take that into my off week and I can work on. So the challenge is just part of the process for them, right? Like it's just part of, it's all part of the process again. And you can leave a bad tournament being motivated or a bad round of golf. We're talking to, the occasional golfer. I could leave a bad round of golf with something I've learned about my process through the challenge to make me better. And that's so motivating, but you can't get it without a growth mindset. You can't, without the growth mindset, go, oh, I played like bleep today, but you know what?
Yes.
I took some positives from it. Like, You're
right. Yeah.
And that's what growth mindset does. And if you're gonna be fixed in the challenge, it's gonna be very hard to jump levels. Very, very, very hard to jump levels.
Without a doubt. All right. So moving on to, I wouldn't say maybe the most important or most relevant part of this, but I could make a good argument that it's the most relevant is what happens with feedback. So you hit a shot and you have one of two options. You can either judge it and say, okay, that was good or bad, or you can state it as a fact of what exactly just happened on that shot. So you really have 5 options, right? You have vertical strike location, horizontal strike location. You have where the low point was prior to impact, after impact. You have face direction relative to path, right? And then you have speed, right? So every shot you have up to 5 pieces of information that you can answer, you can give yourself literally after every shot. That is specific, right? That is temporary, that is external from you.
Correct.
Now, if you look at the fixed mindset, that feedback that they're going to give themselves after a shot is going to be personal, right? So it's going to be I hit that shot as opposed to the club hit the ball, right? It's going to be more pervasive, right? So you're hitting your wedge, right? You hit your wedge off the heel, right? You say, I'm hitting everything off the heel. No,
you
bro.
Hit one off.
You hit one shot off the heel with your wedge. That doesn't mean you're hitting your driver off the heel. Doesn't mean you're hitting your putter off the heel. You hit that one wedge off the heel.
I see this almost every day. Yes. I teach probably 10 or 11 lessons a day. So at least at some point during the day, someone will hit 5 really good ones and then one whatever, like you said, shank it.
It's like, why do I keep doing that? Like, off the toe. You just did it once, dude.
80% of them are not doing that.
Yes.
It's like, so I'm always trying to I guess without consciously doing it, I guess it's more conscious now that we're talking about this more specific way, is like I'm trying to change their mindset, right? Like I'm trying to get them into a growth mindset. Like, hey, when we're exploring options for your golf improvement, sometimes things like that happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to your point, what you're saying is make it an emotionless reaction, essentially. Like, right, I'm just doing the science. Oh, no. Here's the thing. I got TrackMan. This is why I love TrackMan. We've talked about this episode after episode. Is I can be so objective. I could go, oh, your face was a little.
100%.
Oh, I did it. No, face is a little close. Hey, strike location a little off. Hey, you hit, low point a little bit. Too late after, too early. Like, we have all the data.
Totally,
we have it, so we can be objective all the time. Like, we just measure it.
Absolutely,
so there's no emotion in it. And to your point, it's like, hey, okay, now we know what to do. But in the fixed mindset, it's
just good or bad. There's no
binary
information from that.
Yeah, it's like, to your point, we were talking before we come on, it's like, did I do all my skills and line them all up, which is hard in golf, and boom, I hit a good shot and then I'm happy? Or
the point,
I might have one variable, and I see this a lot. I even work through it this way in the lesson, is I'm trying to work down to one variable. And sometimes that one variable is face angle, which can be, a lot of times it is, in a way, the last one. And it could be like, oh, no, that was a great shot. You did it. You swung it fast. Low point was good. You hit it really solid on the face. The path was really good. And then the face was close. So you hit it 20 yards left. Okay. Yep. So you did all those things really well, and one of them wasn't great. Okay. We're doing great here. That's what I keep doing.
80% it'll get you through college. Like,
right.
But they will say, because one of the 5 elements was out of place. Like, I see this rhythm can be fine, face is fine, horizontal strike is fine, the right left low point is fine, but the arc height was just a little bit too high, right? And so they hit a quote unquote top, right? And then it's like, oh, it's awful. Like, I'm swinging it terrible today. I'm like, no, you literally got 4 out of 5 correct, and you missed out on 1, and now you think that the sky's falling. Like,
this is where acceptance comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
Because acceptance is a huge deal, and in golf,
yes,
I want to make it clear. Acceptance does not mean, hey, golf's hard, so I'm just going to miss everything, and I shouldn't expect to hit good ones. No. That's not acceptance. Okay. I see some data.
It's not resigning yourself
there
to
you go.
less.
So I see some interpretation of data where people will say, oh, if you're a 14 handicap, and you miss the green with a wedge, Tiger did it 20% of the time. So you should manage your expectation. Okay. I get that. That's not acceptance to me. You should still expect to put your wedge on the green, right? But then react to it in a growth-minded way. That's what I've always said, right? Well, why did I miss the green? Was it my decision making? Did I misjudge the way? Like, who knows? But don't make it personal. Make it about the process, right? Don't expect to do something bad just because Tiger did it better than you. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, to your point, don't accept something less. Just understand why it happened and help that feed your process through the next time. So acceptance means
the feedback,
acceptance means like, yes, I'm going to miss some because golf is hard. You're playing, like you're recreating occasionally, a lot of you, at a very difficult sport. Okay? Like very difficult to play well and very difficult to get better. And so you got to accept that. That you have to accept.
Yep.
Okay? So there's going to be some murkiness in there. There's going to be some ugliness in there.
Yeah, and that's, again, why TrackMan can be great, because it can just show you what your dispersion is. Like, okay, your driver has an 80-yard wide dispersion. So you've hit how many drives? You've hit 4 out of 5 drives, great. The 5th drive was within your dispersion, and the problem was there wasn't 80 yards of room, right, on this hole. Right? You hit it within your dispersion. There wasn't enough room. Your ball's in the hazard. That sucks. But it was always going to happen. It was always going to happen at some point.
It was coming.
Yeah, exactly. And we're rolling the die, right? And that was one of the faces that happened to come up on that swing, right? So making feedback more permanent. Sorry. I'm trying one more time. Right, so lastly, as we talk about the feedback, right, feedback can be more pervasive, which would be widespread. It could be more personal. It can also be more prolonged, right? So I like to use like the 3 Ps, so a great like thing to remember or just to write down or right, just remember the 3 Ps, right? Pervasive, prolonged, and personal, right? If you can keep your feedback from being those 3 things, you're pushing yourself towards the growth mindset, right? Making things more prolonged, right? More permanent would be saying, okay, because you didn't do it this one time, you're never going to be able to do it. Yeah. Right. And how often do we hear that? It's like, day. I'm never going to get this. Every day. Yep. I'm never going to get this.
I can't.
Okay.
The I can'ts drive me nuts. I mean, it's just like fingernails on a chalkboard.
Totally.
Totally. And then as we're working through, we all make mistakes, don't we, Rob? There's mistakes.
Yes.
So
and this does connect to the challenge point that we talked about earlier. But a fixed mindset is going to basically hate their mistakes, right? And they're going to view training as trying to avoid mistakes. And so when you think about the environment that a lot of fixed mindset golfers kind of put them in, they try to create environments that make performance in practice as perfect as you can possibly get. And I just was reminded of a quote that might be the worst quote of all time. Is perfect practice makes perfect.
Well, depending on how you interpret that. Yeah.
That one quote has ruined, countless people in their pursuit of trying to learn something.
Okay, so
define practice makes perfect.
To the listener why you think that statement can be interpreted in a way that's very detrimental.
Yes, because you are chasing perfect performance.
You got it.
In practice.
Yeah. And so we talked about this on the last episode. It's like your ability to hit 12 perfect 7-irons in a row isn't a precursor to hitting a 7-iron in a row.
Because here's what happens, okay? So what let's talk about it. So what would someone need to do to get themselves into a place to where they could hit 12 quote unquote perfect of anything in a row, right? They would have to make the environment so
sterile.
Controlled.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So sterile. Like, we're going to take away all this potential error.
All the variability.
Right? To try to make yeah, exactly, right? To make everything as perfect as we can possibly get it, right? And we're going to try to repeat. What happens when we play golf?
It doesn't happen because there's variability. Here's what
Not
happens.
the way it works.
You're on the 72nd hole of the U.S. Open, and you've got a 52-yard bunker shot. Or how far?
Yep.
How far was the shot?
Yeah, that was about right.
Like that, right? And guess what? Does Bryson practice that? No, he does not practice 52-yard bunker shot. He doesn't. He never hit. I guarantee you never hit that shot in practice, in his practice round, right? Let alone try to do it, 12 times in a row.
But what he was so good at in that moment is he was able to predict. He was able to predict what that environment was going to do to his golf ball given a certain behavior, given a certain movement, right? So he's like, okay, if I do this, I should get something kind of like that, right? And he committed to his prediction, and his prediction was bang on. It was perfect, right? So we need to train it. We need to train in a way that develops our predictive capabilities, which means, okay, given this scenario, if you do X, what is going to happen? Like, what's the outcome going to be, right? And then as you start to get better at recognizing patterns, right, and as you start to be able to adapt what you're doing relative to these different problems that you're solving, you get more predictable.
Problem solving. It's not about taking away variables. It's about adding them in and then figuring it out, right?
And the only way you can learn that is by messing up, is by failing.
And so,
right? Because that failing is not failing, it's just feedback, right? It's like, okay, what just happened there? Okay, let me take what just happened there and now do something with it. It's
part of the process. It's part of the process. The
There
mistake,
you go, right?
It's like this. I say this 20 times a day. You learn to ride the bike by falling off of it. Okay? Like, this is just part of the process. Like,
babies learn to walk because, all right, they have no length, like, they can't think their way through it.
No.
Right? They just fall forward, they fall back, they fall left, they fall right, and then they figure out kind of where something's in between. So they predict that, oh, if I do this with my foot, with my leg, I'm probably going to stay somewhere kind of upright, right? And that's how movement learning works.
And those mistakes, again, it kind of goes back to, like, we need to react to it. So what a growth mindset reacts to that, just unemotionally, right? Like, it's feedback. It's just part of the.
They say, and this is a little bit of a precursor. They say, "Huh, how interesting."
Wonder what happened there. It's interesting.
They get curious, right? There's an interest, curiosity behind what they're doing, right? There's not a protecting my ego aspect behind what they're doing generally.
Right. That's growth mindset in a nutshell, right? It's about having all those muddy parts. Would you say train ugly? It's about all of that, right?
Yeah.
And then when you try something, it works, says, okay, why didn't it work? Let me try something else. And here's where I think we are. This is what we're trying to tell the listener, is that we have all the tools now to fuel this learning process. All of them. We've got ball flight data, club data that's measured. We've got controlled environments and varied environments. We've got on-course data that we look at. We've got all of the stuff. We can adjust your clubs. There's so many things we can do now with all aspects of your game to be able to work through this. 25 years ago, 30 years ago, we didn't have all that. The feedback was really tricky. The mistakes were, you could be clueless about the mistake. Like you as a student taking a lesson 30 years ago, you hit a shot, okay? And you were there to learn from the pro, Okay, and the pro would go, oh, here's what you did. How did the pro know what happened there? What were they using for feedback? They would say things like, oh, I can look at the divot and tell, or I could watch the ball flight and know, or I can tell by the sound. This is all we had back. This is not where we are anymore. So the growth mindset has no excuses anymore. We have nothing to demotivate it. We can be focused on the process now and get people through the learning way, way quicker than we ever could in the past because we just measure it. We know the answers. We didn't know the answers before. We really didn't know why the ball went where it was. We just guessed, right? Like now we know and we can measure it. And so now we've got all this ability. There's no reason to ever have a fixed mindset when it comes to golf. You just can't. You're not going to get better if you have that mindset. You're just not. And so this is why when we talked about it, I said we've got to start with mindset. Like this is where it all happens. This is where all of it. This
100%.
Is where it all happens. We're on the same page.
It just cascades from there.
We were on the same page. And you see it in other sports. You see it in other areas. You can look at Tiger. I mean, I just think Tiger seemed to be ahead of the game on all this stuff, didn't he? I mean, it was just, it was an incredible thing with him. And who knows? I mean, you just listen to him talk through all his interviews throughout his life, and you go, "Wow, he was so growth minded." And it might have been to his detriment. You know, that might be why he can't. You know, he really struggled at the end with his body. But at the end of the day,
how can you say what he did was wrong?
Yeah, you can't. You can't. Other than he hurt himself, right? But he was always searching for the challenge, for where he could put his effort, right? Making mistakes didn't seem to bother him all that much. You know, he could rebound quicker than anybody else. Like his bounce back ability was phenomenal. He solved the problem better than anybody else. You put him behind a tree and he was going to hit a shot that David Faraday would say things like, I hope I have grandchildren just so I can tell them about the shot I just saw. Like he just had it all. Where it came from, I don't know. You know, where I'm sure that Earl's military strategy background played a role. I think his mom's Buddhist, religion played a role in some of this mindset stuff. But Tiger was just, he had it all, man.
Yeah,
and it's really cool to see. And I think this is something that there's no question. This action step can be maybe somebody's biggest action step for their game. What do you think?
Without a doubt.
I was saying before, it's like, don't search for one thing. Don't search for a quick thing. Search for all the things. Explore all the things that could potentially, your mindset's huge. Your equipment's huge. Your scoring strategy thoughts are huge. There's just on and on and on with golf. Like, all these facets, right? And so I think for us as teachers and coaches, if you're listening and you're a coach, which I know we have a lot of coaches that listen, this is stuff that you should explore a little bit more. So tell them again what the name of the book is, Robin. I'm going to put it in the show notes.
It's called Golf Beneath the Surface.
Beneath the Surface. Dr. Raymond
Pryor.
A friend of the pod. Just kidding. And I'll link that in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll have him. We'll have him on at some point.
I'll call him up. Have him on. Do you know Dr. Raymond Pryor? Are you guys friends?
We did connect earlier this year. Yeah,
so. I'm sure he'd be a great interview for the show. I'll link it in the show notes. All right, Rob, anything else you wanted to cover today on today's show?
No, I think we hit it.
So I am excited about that show. I think that was really, really good. I love how things keep coming back to, it's like a full circle look. I think even the listener can go like, these guys, they're not making this up as they go. It all kind of pieces together, right?
It does.
In summary today, don't be fixed, be growth minded. Don't say I can't. Just use the ugliness as just fuel for the process, right? Fueling your curiosity, fueling your desire to improve. And you'll get better at golf. You will, I promise you.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about
that. And then and I would say like the last thing that I would say is like, if you feel like you are exhibiting fixed mindsets, then I would start by just trying to bring your awareness to it, right? So do not, again, don't have a fixed mindset about having a fixed mindset. Don't judge yourself. Don't say, oh, I shouldn't feel this or I shouldn't have this, right? Just say, okay, this is something that I'm noticing, right? I'm noticing that I am trying to protect my ego when I go out to practice, right? That would be a great example. Like, okay, when I go out to practice, I'm not actually trying to learn. I'm trying to look good in front of other people. So then just spend some time, like when you go out to practice, like don't try to fix it right away. Just go out and just bring your awareness to it. Say, hey, I noticed that I just went to the very far edge of the range where no one could see me, right? I had that urge to do that, right? Because I didn't want anyone to watch me fail, right? Or something like that, right? And right, you can still go down there. You can still go to the end of the range, but just file it away. Just have this library of occurrences of like, okay, that's a fixed mindset behavior. That's a fixed mindset behavior. Don't judge it, but I promise you, if you just bring your attention to it for long enough, it'll come out of what we call set it and forget it mode. It'll come out of automatic processing. So when it comes out of automatic processing, when you're like, okay, I can feel this coming on, I'm aware of this, I know what's going to happen, then you have the option to do one of two things. Either keep doing what you're trying to do or put yourself in the jungle, put yourself in the discomfort on purpose, right? And so when you put yourself in the discomfort on purpose, that's your opportunity to then start to layer in some growth stuff to where like, okay, I am giving myself positive reinforcement, right? I'm appraising the fact that I just did this thing that was not comfortable that I know is going to be good for me. Now, what's really interesting about this, I don't want to go too much down a rabbit hole. Like this is 2 shows in a row where we've been wrapping up and then all of a sudden we get down a rabbit hole. It's like there's the idea behind instant gratification and kind of like easy access dopamine, which is like the quote unquote like the feel good chemical, versus like the delayed gratification long-term access dopamine, right? So turns out when you do stuff that feels good right now, generally speaking, it's gonna feel good right now, but it's actually gonna kick back and you're gonna have basically a dopamine deficit after the fact.
Like a hangover.
When you think of things, you're going to want to replace that with more, right? So if you think about like foods that aren't very good for you that taste good, right? So like you have this, it feels good. Oh, but now I kind of know that I was moving away from health, right? I'm kind of feeling this dopamine kind of withdrawal. Okay, I need to now go get some dessert or something like that. Like that would be an example. What's really cool is that when you are first aware of the behaviors, because again, awareness is the first step of taking it out of set it, forget it mode, right? You can't just, if you're already fixed mindset, you can't just go to the course the next day and say, okay, I'm going to be growth.
Yeah. Can't flip
you
the
can't
switch.
do that, right? You cannot flip the switch. You have to.
It's essentially like a value system, which it almost takes a kind of like that religious. I'm not saying I don't want to put it on the level of religious, but you hit that you tend to hit this place where it's like, okay, now I'm ready to change. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So by just bringing awareness to it, and this could be just something as simple as like writing it down. Like say, okay, I noticed that today I had the urge to do this because I know it was going to feel good, right? Or whatever, right? So if you're just bringing your awareness to it, not trying to fix it, just bringing your awareness to it, at some point it's going to be out of set it, forget it mode. You're going to have the option to do something more towards the growth mindset. Now, when you exhibit behaviors that are more in line with growth mindset, it will likely feel worse right away, right? So when you go in front of, let's say you go to the other side of the range where now everyone can see you, you're going to have that 5, 6, 7 minutes in the front end where you're like, man, this is uncomfortable. Man, I don't want to be here right now. And you do it and you get through it. Now, when you get through it, right, when it's done, when it's over, your brain is going to say, oh man, I actually survived that. I got through it. And what happens? You get this huge rush of dopamine that feels incredible, and it actually lasts a long, long time, and it doesn't have that kickback at the end to where now you're actually at a deficit. It actually stays with you throughout the day and throughout a week and throughout however long, right? So understand that, Trevor Reagan talks about jungle tigering, right? So like, do you want to be a tiger that grew up in the zoo, or do you want to be a tiger that grew up in the jungle? Because one day they're going to get thrown both out into the jungle. Which one do you want to be, right? So like the people who decide to be the zoo tiger, they feel good, they feel good, they feel good. They get thrown into the jungle, and then what happens?
They die.
Right. Not good stuff, right?
They starve. Yeah.
But if you choose the discomfort on the front end, right? And like this is where Dr. Pryor is so good, because he talks about like you got to understand how the brain works, because you've got to be incentivized. You got to have the motivation to do the thing that is discomforting, because your brain is just not designed to do that. Your brain is designed to do what is comfortable. But if your brain knows that you're going to chase the discomfort because you're going to get this huge kickback rush of dopamine on the back end that has no ramifications, basically no kickback, right? Then it's like, okay, I know it's not going to feel good on the front end, but it's going to feel a heck of a lot better on the back end. And typically that's where like better performance also starts to come in too. So it has a lot of ramifications. So I think I just wanted to leave with that as an action step of like, hey, just don't try to go out and like think that you're something is wrong with you or you're doing it wrong, like in that, because that is not at all the case. Like everything about what you're doing, your brain is perfectly designed to be behaving exactly the way it's behaving. The problem is that golf is a thriving situation, and our brains are adapted through however many years, so long, right, by trying to survive, right? So we try to take survival instincts into a thriving setting, and it takes some understanding and some work to try to basically say, okay, to your brain, this isn't a survival setting, right? There's nothing that I need to protect myself from. So, right, if you've listened to this podcast, if you're getting some discomfort and feeling like, oh gosh, I realize that I'm doing these behaviors and like they're saying that I shouldn't be doing this. What we're saying is that there are detriments to performance. We're not saying that you shouldn't be doing them, because, right, your brain is perfectly designed to be doing exactly what it's currently doing, right? It's just now you are armed with the information to make a better choice when you go out and start to work towards making a better choice. So it's, we're not saying that that there's something wrong with you.
No. I think we're driving towards safety. We're driving towards, and what it takes to grow. We know a lot of times is outside of that. It's outside the comfort zone. Not that you can't grow in the comfort zone. You can. Many people can. Mm-hmm. It's less likely. And I think that when you get outside your comfort zones, that's where, as we know, that's that fuels the growth, right? That's what it's all about. And that's all we're here to help you with, listener. It's just that growth. We just want you to improve. And so a lot of times, and we went through this on our very first series, a lot of times people don't get better at golf because they don't step out of their comfort zone. They don't ever push to that next level. And like you said, on the last episode, sometimes we trained and it's just fun because we're learning golf early and the learning curve is steep and we're doing well. And then it gets to be effortful and it gets to be tougher. And that's where we got to start really. So where we talk about level 1, 2, and 3, it's
like level 2.
This is where we start hitting it, level 2. And then level 3 might be a little more comfortable. I mean, obviously the effort goes up, like we were talking about, but
the effort goes crazy. The effort in level 3 is the amount of effort required to improve in level 3 is hard to wrap your brain around.
It's a lot. It's a lot. When you're talking about fractional data points for scoring, it's a lot. So anyway, I think that's a good place to wrap this episode. Growth mindset, people, try to work on it. That's all we're saying. Just try to learn more about it, right? I know a bunch of husbands and wives that play golf together that listen to our podcast, and I know what's coming. I'm going to have a husband come up to me and say, my wife told me I was having a fixed mindset. When it came to my chipping. She's right. I'm going to hear it. So spouses, do not point this out to your spouse. Leave them to deal with it. Leave them to deal with it. Anyway, that's all I got for this evening. That was really, really fun. If you, as always, we appreciate you listening to the show, and the listenership is growing. There's no question about it, and that we are so appreciative that you spend an hour or so with us tuning in, and that's it. And if you want access to our bonus content, you can find us at Substack. It's thegolfintervention.substack.com. And you can find our bonus stuff on there. And I guess that's all I have for tonight. Please like, rate, and review on your favorite podcasting app. And some of you have been doing that. We cannot appreciate that anymore because that really helps people find the show.
And we'll soon be on YouTube, which is exciting.
Be watching. You'll get to see us. We're doing our makeup now so we can look good for the YouTube. I was like getting ready to record. And I'm like, oh, we're doing video. I gotta go take a shower.
I didn't. I'm still like.
And we were doing growth mindset today, so I wore my Penn State. You can see it on there. This is my Penn State wrestling shirt.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Those of you who don't know about Penn,
should have grabbed my Clemson stuff.
If you don't know about Penn State wrestling, they're the most dominant NCAA program that there is, maybe of all time. They've won 11 of the last 13 national championships. And if you listen to Cale Sanderson talk or any one of their wrestlers, you are going to hear growth-minded things come out of their mouths. It's so cool. Listen to their interviews, watch them, tune in. It's one of my favorite things to do. I was a wrestler as a kid in Pennsylvania, so just couldn't like it anymore. And, man, very growth-minded. Anyway, good night from Richmond, Virginia, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will catch you next time on part 2 of the mental game. Oh, we're going to call it something better. But we're going to talk a little bit more about actually bringing what we need sort of mentally to performance on the course. That's what we're going to talk about more specifically on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.
Love it. Cheers.